Hello Multiverse, welcome to Omniverse Gamers. My name is Damien Bazzaio. This video is going to dissect another dynamic encounter. We're going to call this one Frog Puzzle Gone Wrong. This is an example of a puzzle encounter that I kind of overreached and it ended up in a TPK, so it was kind of a complete failure, but also the nature of this game, it didn't really matter. This encounter is from a game called Alleged Asylum Adventures. They're all arcane magic users. There's a warlock, hexblade, sorcerer, shadow sorcerer, and a psionic wizard. And they are all trapped in this asylum where they're literally like an insane asylum, but they also have these weird dreams of escaping the asylum and all these interactions that they have in this other strange world where they feel like they're leaving. If you saw my shark and rowboat one, that was when they thought they had escaped the asylum and they had to fight the shark, and then they woke back up in the asylum. The people in the asylum tell them they've only been there a few days, but they have memories of like several days. So it's this really confusing, like mind wreck kind of a game. You know, they're in an insane asylum, or are they, kind of thing. So, and there's these blue doors in their room. The doors are magical, and they've seen blue ones and red ones and green ones, and they've determined that the workers that work at the asylum have these gems, and the ones that have, if you have the gem of the color of the door, you're allowed to pass the door at will. So they kind of know there's a way to get to the door, they just don't have a way. So they've had some dealings with this little halfling boy that he kind of writes some notes in this little book. It's a little magical book, and they have this magical pencil they can write on, and it'll send messages, but then it disappears, so the asylum people don't know that it's there. So they use that kind of sometimes to communicate with this little boy, and they're trying to find clues. They hate this little boy because they think he's part of the trap. They don't really know what's going on. They just know they're trapped, and they don't like it. So anyway, after they had the dream about being washed away by the sharks, they washed ashore on this weird island. And there was like a tide, and they had to fight this like lizard type thing. It was like basic encounter. They fought a lizard. They were second level magic users, so there wasn't much for combat there. It was just a little excitement for our little session. And eventually the tide washed away, and there was this blue glow coming from this cave. And the blue glow was the same color as the door of their room. So it's kind of like a clue, a little foreshadowing there. The next session they go into this cave after it's a dream sequence. So they go back to their asylum. They live there for a little bit. Then they go into these dream sequences within this other world. So they go into this little blue cave that's glowing blue. They find a box. Inside this room is a box, a big box. It looks like an index card box, like a little box of metal that open up, but it's big. And they have a little one in their room. They've been putting all their magical stuff. Everything magical in their room gets wiped every midnight. But they have found this little little lead box. And if they put stuff in the box, the magical stuff in the box, it doesn't get wiped at midnight. So all the stuff they've been collecting, they put in this little box. They their magical pencil and little things that they find, so they don't get caught, basically. So in this big box, it's similar, and they find a pencil and a little notepad, a little book, and they open it up. And in the book, I have some clues because what they're going to be about to do is a puzzle encounter. And they're wizards. They're not very good at combat. Not that they're not good at combat, but they're very weak. They're second level wizards, so they're not very strong, and so it's only so much you can do with combat with 3 arcane caster. So inside the book, it was written down. It said, "Without water, the Gatemaker cannot be." And that was a clue. That was foreshadowing. That was a clue. That was the big clue. Without water, the Gatekeeper cannot be. Now, the boy speaks Halfling, and there's a bunch of Halfling runes written on the thing too. And now one of our wizards, a wizard Scion, he can cast comprehend languages, and I thought he was going to, so we could read the rest of the runes. But he did not. He wanted to save his spell stock because he didn't know what was happening. So, right off the bat, I was like, "Oh crap! There's more clues they're not going to understand." We'll make it work. Whatever. So this map was made by Dr. Mapso. I'll leave a link in the down below to their Patreon. They have a lot of cool maps, and they were very gracious to let me use this on the film. So thanks to them. So as you can see, it's just a really cool map with this puddle in the middle and all these water things. So I thought, hey, let's make a puzzle out of this. We'll have these water streams, and the clue was without water, the Gatemaker can't be. So in my mind, I'm going to have something in the center of this. You'll see how there's something in the center of this pond that's gaining power from the water, because everything in this room, everything in this game, everything they do in the outer world is symbolizing something in the asylum. They're not really in the outer world. They're dreaming it. Or there might be the future. They don't really know if it's the future or the past before they got to the asylum. They just know they're in these 2 different realms, and it's kind of like a dreamlike world. So I was just thinking, they can figure out, they can stop all 5 of these flows, and then the water will stop going in the center, and that's how they're going to defeat this monster. That's the puzzle. Without water, the Gatemaker can't be. That's my foreshadowing. I thought that would be fine. So let me switch over to my side view, and we will. So they go into this cave. Here they are. They enter this cave. The first thing they see, it's kind of dark. They can only see so far. They have one of them has dark vision, and there's a little bit of glowing. There's like these little glowing crystals, like phosphorus crystals. So it's a little there's dim light here, and so they see these little frogs, these little grung-like creatures up ahead, and they're just kind of looking. Oh, there's like a channel of water where the tide had washed through. It's like a channel of like really shallow water and mud kind of going through, and they see these little frogs, and the frogs are kind of picking up minnows from their minnows are flapping in the mud, and they're picking them up and putting them in their mouths. They're not eating them; they're just kind of storing them. And on their heads, they have this little rune that's glowing, and because they don't speak halfling, they don't know what the runes say. The runes actually say collectors, but the players don't know that because they did not cast comprehend languages. They just see this little rune. They're like, oh, they make note of it, because they're like, oh, this rune must be important, but they don't know what it says. They don't know that it says collector, and I was like, crap, but whatever. And they're pretty docile. They go up to them, they kind of try to communicate with them, and they're just kind of like, burr, burr, and they're just kind of doing their thing, collecting their little minnows. And there's these crystals along the side of the water here, over here, and they don't know what they are. The warlock goes over to touch one of the crystals, and as she does that, the crystals suddenly go from this dark blue. They start to turn to this really bright red, and then they explode. And when they explode, they shoot her 20 feet forward, which was one of the mechanics that I had. So they start to interact with these little frog creatures. They're kind of talking to them. They don't really make much noise. And then as the warlock touches this crystal and explodes, all these frog things get really agitated, and they start coming at the scion. They start coming. They're trying to be, they're just like, they're mad. You stepped on our crystals, whatever. They don't know that those are their babies. Those are their eggs are in these crystals. They don't know that, but that's what the crystals, when they explode, they vault the character 20 feet. So it was more of a battlefield thing. When they touched them, they could jump. It was kind of like a way to make this combat really dynamic and crazy. But they didn't know that yet. So anyway, when they did that, they angered these little frog people. And they all kind of grung, 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 and they're making this little noise. Then they started surrounding them, and then they were like, we don't want to hurt you, and they're just like grung, grung, grung. But then they actually reached down and grabbed some minnows. The sorcerer came and had a minnow, and she gave it to the one that was right next to them to kind of here, we're your friend. And they made persuasion checks, and they're all charisma. Sorcerer's really charisma. So they kind of talked these things down. They're like, oh no, we're on your side. We're helping you collect. They couldn't talk to them, but they kind of went back to their business. They let them go, and they were fine. And they knew well, we don't step on the crystals. That's bad. So little things went, and they kind of fed their way. They realized that they just kind of worked their way around these little frog guys, that they didn't bother them at all. So they go forward a little bit. And they opens up into this big chamber where they see this massive frog-like thing sitting in the pond, in the middle of the room, in the middle of that pond. This big, massive frog thing with a word written across his neck, across his head, that says Aloath. But they don't speak halfling at the moment, so they have no idea what that says. And then what that means is it means Gatemaker, which the clue. Without water, the Gatemaker can't be. They do not get that clue. They still know without water the Gatemaker can't be, but they don't know that this guy is the Gatemaker. They don't make that connection, and they're just like, oh, enemy, and the thing's like, you should not be here. And they're like, oh, we're just exploring, and he's like, you should not be here, and he starts to move towards them, like aggressively. He starts to, But all the little frogs, they just kind of stay where they are, He hops out of the thing at them, and he flicks his tongue, tries to hit the Scion Wizard, misses. Just like, just a really quick attack that he does, and he misses. And then, okay, so now it's on. They know this. They have to fight this thing, and they're not really sure about the little frogs, but they're like, as long as we don't bother them, they don't seem to be active. So they proceed to start fighting this thing. They realize if they hit it with electricity, it slows it down, and it loses a lot of its powers. It's all wet, and electricity hurts this thing. I go from having 3 attacks and a tongue slash thing to only being able to spit. I can't move, and I have to spit. This thing can't. It only can move so much, and it can spit. So they know if they hit it with electricity, it's really good. But also, every time they hit it with electricity, all of the other frogs kind of feel it. They feel this little twinge, and they only have 10 hit points. Every time the big frog is hit with electricity, all those little things lose a hit point of max hit points. So they all start to weaken. And they don't want to hurt the frogs. They don't want to hurt the little grung things. They're pretty friendly with them, but they know this big guy's a threat. So at some point, our psionic wizard thought it would be a good idea to step on the needles again to vault himself over the top of the Gatekeeper, the big frog enemy, just to kind of get flanking and just try to get a better... Totally forgetting in the moment that when he stepped on those, he was going to anger the frog things again. So as he does that, the things explode, he gets vaulted up to the side of the frog, and then I'm just like, oh no. And after all the other two are like, no, don't do that. Now all these little frogs are agitated, and they're fighting all these frogs and this giant frog who's actually wounded because electricity is hurting him. But now they have, a lot of little frogs, like a dozen little frogs in this room against 3 magic users at second level. I knew already this was going downhill, and I was like, oh crap. But the nature of this game is I can actually kill them. It doesn't matter because it's a dream sequence. So if they die, they die. I don't TPK my characters a lot, but in this game, it didn't really matter. So if they die, they die. If they can survive this and win, well, that's going to be epic. So they start fighting this thing. It gets crazy. They realize they have to keep doing electricity. So every round, at least one of them shoots with electricity, but they don't know that it literally doesn't matter how many hit points they give this guy. Into this guy, they have to stop the water. That's his life force. It's stopping these rivulets from joining. The water is how they're going to defeat him. This is a metaphor. It's not just fighting this physical beast. He's the gatekeeper. They're trying to overcome the gatekeeper to get their keys, get their own keys, so that they can escape the actual asylum. That's why everything in this room is glowing blue, the same blue as the door to the room. And it's a whole big thing. When they win, they're going to have a way to get out of the room and explore the actual asylum, because they've been stuck in this one room in the asylum, and all their all the games that are happening in these dream sequences. If they can succeed at this encounter, they now can explore the real world in the real asylum. But they don't know that anyway. So they're fighting, and it just gets crazier and crazier. They totally break down and just start using this as they know it's a desperate encounter. There's way too many. They're being overwhelmed. But the three of them, they just fight and fight and fight, and they just try. The little frog guys surround the two down here, the sorcerer and the hexblade, and they're just getting overwhelmed. The other frogs all surround the psionic wizard. And it's going bad. Now the big guy comes back over. They fight around. They don't even think about the clues. I keep kind of telling them, remember the clue. Without water, the gate maker can't be. And they're just we have to kill this. We have to kill this frog before we can worry about the puzzle. Not knowing the puzzle was how you kill the frog. They're just my foreshadowing failed. It's an example of my foreshadowing failing right there, because it just sometimes it doesn't work. So there, the combat goes. The frog goes back into his little hole to get some more power. He's moving very slowly because they keep hitting electricity, so he's moving very slowly. Eventually, our sonic wizard, in desperation, casts Shatter and catches himself in it. He has just enough hit points. He's like, I can maybe do it. So we cast Shatter. He does not. He does really, really high damage. He killed himself. He kills all the frogs around him and himself. And the big guy's still left. So now he's dead. I have my other two. I have a Shadow Sorcerer and a Hexblade at second level. Not very strong. Against this big mild dude and all these little dudes. So they fight, they eventually, the dude starts coming at him again. They can only deal so. Now they're down, their action economy is 2 attacks per round. I have a ton. They're just a downhill fight. I eventually kill the warlock. I eventually kill the sorcerer. She survives the last. She's a shadow sorcerer. She backs away. She's, the last one to survive. The last thing she remembers is this big slimy frog just eating her. And they all die. And they wake up in their asylum bedrooms, like, freaking out from a nightmare. That didn't even happen. That was a nightmare. You guys just got murdered by a frog. But also, it was a nightmare. So that's an example of a puzzle encounter gone wrong, ended up to be a TPK. It did not work. It was still fun. They had fun. And it was like, oh my god, we all died. And my girlfriend was really mad at me for she doesn't like to die. She was really mad that I killed her. She's like, there was no way. No, that was an undefeatable situation. And I'm like, no, there were ways to defeat it. There was gave you a lot of clues. Some of the clues you missed, some of the clues you had, you guys decided to fight this thing like a normal combat, and that is not how this game works. Out of character, I kind of, but then also, because of the nature of this game, there was a dream, and then the little boy kind of taunted them in their little book, being like, oh, you guys, I thought you guys are smarter than that, maybe you guys aren't the ones that are going to help us escape. And they're like, screw you, little bastard, we just got killed for you. But this also, now we get to do this again next time, and it will actually work. We have to fight this frog, we need these keys, we have to be able to get out of this room. We're going to do this encounter again on the next session. They're going to be a little bit smarter about it because they know it's lethal. They have to now, wait, what did we miss? So now I'm going to make a video about part 2. I'll make another video about that. How this same encounter went down successfully. Our second attempt was way more successful. So I hope to see you in that video. I hope this video helped you see how a puzzle encounter can sometimes go wrong. Sometimes the puzzle is a little too obscure, and that's a danger you make when you make an encounter puzzle based. It just sometimes it's going to be bad. So I hope that it's interesting. Please go see the next video. I'll make a link to it. I'll probably make an end card to make to part 2. And we'll do part 2 of this battle, and you'll see how they actually succeeded and actually fought and won this encounter. So we are Omniverse Gamers. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Check out the next video. Hope to see you soon, and keep on gaming.